Hi, it sounds like there is a grumpy gorilla in the next room at 2 or 3 points during this recording. I promise you there was not a grumpy gorilla anywhere near us. It's just that Anushka and I battled with some background noises during our recording. Someone nearby was using a hammer and chisel, and the byproduct of my dulling that sound means that you will hear an occasional background grunt. Both Anushka and I think it's not actually too distracting at all, and it's certainly loads better than it was. Enjoy the show. You're listening to This Won't Fix You. I'm your host, Nadine Pitton, and this show is a curation of interesting models, metaphors and images discovered or manifested through my work as an accredited psychotherapist. You can expect to hear nifty ideas, clever language and thought-provoking ways of looking at life. Each episode, you'll get one of two alternating perspectives. First, a conversation which introduces and discusses the theory or idea, and we call this the A side, and then the B side, which, while not therapy, is a deeper exploration of that theory or idea from a more therapeutic standpoint. Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode, which is going to explore what Frozen and maybe other fairy tales, maybe other films too, can teach us about what it is to be human, and especially shame. Of course, that nugget creeps in everywhere, does it not? How we try to, in the words of Elsa from Frozen, conceal, don't feel the parts of ourselves that have been dismissed or ridiculed or criticised in our past. So for me, I've got a few ideas about that, but I'm going to introduce our co-host today, and this is Anushka Beasley. Hi, Anushka.
Hi, Nadine.
Thanks for coming.
I am so excited to be here. I can't tell you. And some of that is about you. A lot of it is about Frozen.
Are you a little bit of a mini geek?
I'm a fan. I really am. And you know, there's something about animated films that actually scare me. I'm not really into them. I find them tragically sad. And I try to avoid watching them whenever my children call me. But Frozen was something different. It was something we weren't used to, and it really kind of tapped into the zeitgeist. It was, you know, a global phenomenon. I think maybe fifth highest grossing Disney movie, 20th highest grossing in the world, and there are really important reasons for that. So yeah, I love it.
I'm already curious to dig into what it is that you're saying, and what it is about. Yeah, you talked about zeitgeist, what it is that sort of interested us. But before we get there, would you mind telling people kind of a little bit about who you are and what you do, and maybe later on we can say where people can find you?
Yes. So I'm a psychotherapist. I work. I've got a private practice in London, and I've kind of come into this world probably because I was, you know, as a young child, very interested in how we relate to each other and how we make sense of being in the world. I always found being in the world not that easy. So I think that it kind of led me here. I did a lot of things before that, but it led me here. And there are some specialisms that I work with. I work with trauma presentations, a lot of family and relationship presentations, and identity, which is obviously a really big theme in Frozen.
And family relationships. Her shame arises from a family dynamic, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
We'll come back to the end to find out where it is that people can find you. As far as I can see, you're on directories, but we'll come back to that later. And there's also more to say about what it is that you do and have done over time, and that might come out as we talk. So for people listening then, what it is that would be useful for you to kind of know about what the angle perhaps that I'm coming from, and I don't know which angle Anushka's coming from, so that'll be interesting to hear in a moment. So I kind of understand it in terms of the narratives that are spun about us.
Yeah.
When we're young, particularly, but I mean this can be throughout life, can't it? But the narratives that are spun about us end up becoming something that we react to, against. And so for Elsa, she's trying to respond to a narrative that has been spun about her, and it leads her to isolation, it leads her to shame. Where are you coming from?
I feel like, despite me starting off by saying Frozen was something new, it was something unusual, I suppose I want to contradict that now and say this is nothing new. These are core primal emotions, and we're born with them. This thing that society, the society that we live in, how it makes us feel, how it shapes us, again, that's nothing new. We've been dealing with this since humans have been dealing with each other for forever. Even this particular movie is adapted from a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, The Snow Queen, where there was a mirror and it shattered into a million pieces. And actually, it was a mirror that was created by the devil to diminish goodness and to magnify evil. And as it shattered, it kind of lodged little pieces of the mirror into humans and into the psyche. And then they went around and they saw evil in each other or in themselves, and it affected how they lived. So there's, again, we're telling the same story here, but we are hopefully learning something new about each other and about ourselves along the way. And what I meant earlier about the zeitgeist is that there's something about Frozen being, a metaphor for how important we're realizing mental health is, and the fact that we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And we've not really had conversations like this before, so openly, prioritizing it, understanding the connection between our younger selves, what happens to us as children, and how that impacts us as adults, the kinds of choices we make and the kinds of lives we lead.
As we respond to those shards, so I find that fascinating, that the shards that exist in us that have been sort of pierced, and that we think that they're evil. So we do all have evil in us, all right? It's not evil, but the fairy tale presents it as evil, as a way to access the darkness that exists within us.
Fairy tales have been in existence in so many cultures. I mean, maybe there is a culture out there somewhere in the world that doesn't have fairy tales, but I don't know. And the reason that they exist in all of these different cultures is because they're a psychological tool for children to try to understand the world and understand themselves in it. So yes, this idea of, we kind of go into different kinds of conversations around, religion and the meaning of life and what else is out there. But in terms of this word evil, which is obviously a very strong word, yes, there's something about acknowledging all of our different parts, acknowledging what it means to be good, what it means to be bad, and also the polarizing nature of these words, good and bad, and how that, in trying to teach children about how to be in the world, we can really give them the wrong idea about how to see themselves and how to see others. And we see that in Elsa. We see that in how split, literally, she becomes in fearing the badness within her and fearing as if, she's going to hurt Anna, she's going to hurt her family and, the town that she lives in and the isolation that she ends up plunging herself into in order to keep her badness away from others, with the belief that there's no goodness in her.
Because she does actively, doesn't she, walk away from her parents? She actively pushes her sister away, and then she creates this big ice monster, doesn't she, outside the palace? So there is the big kind of marshmallow man type thing that scares everybody away. So that fear that she's got of her own badness becomes aggressive and becomes and injures people, doesn't it? It then becomes a sort of a weapon that she can't escape from. She's ends up being trapped by her own fear.
Absolutely. And so often in therapy sessions, I will say, we're not here to blame the parents. That's not the aim of this. But we are here to acknowledge what has happened, and the family is the primary group. And there's so much that goes on there. There's so much potential for love and for healing and for support. But it's also, ironically, the place that we can be shamed in the most damaging way, and the place of the first hurt, and maybe the hurt that we then carry around with us, like that ice shard, not understanding the impact that it has on who we are, who we want to be.
I want to ask you another question on the back of that, about how we heal that, because the film presents Anna as being it's love essentially that heals it, isn't it? And you know that there's something kind of quite contrite about that because it's a kids' film, but certainly from my experience of being in the therapy room, it is love, and then it just needs a kind of a revisiting, a sort of a healing, and for somebody to see that shard in us and to accept it and love it. I don't know what I'm curious about what your perspective is.
It's funny, isn't it? Because love is that word that it's so all encompassing, the songs that we sing and the movies that we watch. And yet, you know, it's so easy for us to say, oh, it's a little bit trite to think it's going to fix everything. But I completely understand why you'd say that. Maybe because it feels as if, oh, can it be that easy? And I guess the truth of it is it's a really painful journey, actually. And that's why people are suffering, because it's actually really, really difficult. And I think one of the things that Frozen did that was different was it put the emphasis on sibling love rather than romantic love. And that was something that I think a lot of people were very happy about. The criticism of that is, well, what if you're an only child? What if you don't have a brother or a sister? You know, what then? And I guess in terms of healing, you're right, it is a kids' movie. But the next step from that is it's self-love. That's the real love that's actually, that's what's gonna, you know, in the story, the sibling love is what melted the lump of ice that Anna had in her heart and that saved her. But actually, yeah, one step on, it's self-love that is able to do that. And that's what is going to bring the healing.
And the therapist's role in that, because the therapist is part of that journey from seeking the external healer to being able to heal yourself, being able to soothe yourself, accept yourself. The therapist plays a key role in that journey.
I mean, I think so. There are obviously a lot of different kinds of modalities of therapy out there. You know, a long time ago, you kind of had that very kind of one person psychology, you know, Freud in the chair behind the person, you know, on the couch, and they couldn't see each other and you didn't know a thing about the therapist. You know, it was quite kind of, there wasn't a huge amount of emphasis put on the relationship. And I think what we've come to see over time is that actually love is about connection, and it's the pain of disconnection that we are suffering from. And so, yes, the therapist's role is very important in that, because that is what facilitates a different perspective. The client is perhaps, in an ideal world, able to see that they are lovable, that the goodness, you know, coming back to the movie, that whatever beliefs they might have grown up with, whatever stories they might have told themselves or their families might have told them, that actually that their self-worth here and that relationship that they're having with their therapist is starting to melt some of those blocks of ice that kind of have kept them leading these limited lives, perhaps, you know, making these kind of unconscious choices.
So it's the therapist without their own agenda that enables the authentic in the client, for want of a better word, and the person who's suffering. It's the lack of the therapist's agenda that enables that authentic to come forward.
Ideally, ideally you want. I mean, I suppose you go to a therapist hoping that they'll have an agenda which will be an exploration, a space where you're going to meet together as people. You know, I like to say to my clients, you've come to me because this is what I do. I'm professionally trained, and you're hoping I'm gonna know something, and I get that, but I'm walking alongside you on this journey, and we're going to be doing it together. And I think it's really important for my clients to know that, because sometimes there can be a hierarchy, and you know, in the therapist room. And again, you know, I don't want to do myself out of a job, but there's something around the therapist has the potential to step into that role of the family. So it's actually really, really important that the therapists check themselves, and the therapists understand that this is a situation where this is a very vulnerable place. You know, that, you know, there was a part in Frozen where, during Elsa's coronation, she was looking up at the painting of her parents who had, they died at sea earlier on. But she's repeating, she's repeating the lines of the song, don't feel, conceal. And there's something around, the legacy of her father, even though he's not around anymore, and her wanting to do his bidding, her wanting to please him, her wanting to, fulfill this role that he, this agenda that he had set for her.
Do you know, I not noticed that, because the mother doesn't speak much, does she? In fact, I don't even know if she speaks at all. It is the father who gives her the gloves. It's the father who says, conceal it, don't let people see it. It is him, isn't it? I just not noticed that.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to have a whole different session, Nadine, to go into the absent mother element of this movie, right? I mean, she does not get involved at all. And I'm thinking, where are you? Why aren't you saying something? It's the father. He gives her the gloves, actually. Yeah, absolutely. And the gloves element is actually really, really interesting for me, because it's obviously he does it, to try to help her keep her powers under control. When you think about it, if the woman can turn the entire country to ice, what the hell are these, I don't know, 100% cotton gloves going to do, really?
Oh, she's royalty to be silk.
They'll be silk, won't they? Yeah. But it's actually, in America, gloves are slang for condom. So there's something about him giving her the gloves and putting it on and her being, what that means for her sexuality, what that means for her potency, and these gloves actually representing, something that is really locked down here. And we see, when she takes the gloves off, and in that kind of climax during the song, we see her hair fall, and she's suddenly in this, stunning, dress that, everybody loves, even though she's got waist size of a hula hoop. Again, that's another show. But really, she starts to break free of all of that. So yes, she's really breaking free from the father.
There's a sexuality that emerges. I again not spotted that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like breaking free from, that patriarchal, that father energy. And again, these are these moments in our family, when we're growing up. This is where we learn the most about ourselves. So, Elsa's been out there, she's been put out there in the world and not learned a thing about her sexuality. Whereas Anna, in comparison, is opening every door, literally, and basically engaged within 24 hours. There's something here around and again, the splitting, which is very common in families, with siblings. That one will do just completely the opposite to the other. And often it's an unconscious sense of, well, I can see how that's worked out, not very well. I'll run the other way.
I'm glad that you brought Anna up, because I think she gets missed, doesn't she, in the sensational awakening of Elsa. We don't kind of pay much attention to Anna's development and Anna's maturity.
Yeah, I think, I mean, often in movies, we need that other character to flesh out the main character. But yes, we can miss what they're all about in their story, and they often have a very important story. And if we're looking at this as a metaphor for mental health, but also kind of, why it's touched so many people, why it's been so popular for children and adults. I mean, there's something about Elsa being able to speak so openly about the fears that control her, and about her struggle and not wanting to be controlled by those fears anymore. But there's also something really lovely about Anna, in how much she wants to connect to her sister, in how much she wants to connect. She's had a little incident, as kids do. They play and they rough and tumble, and it happens. It's completely normal. But instead of explaining that to the children, the parents, take her to the trolls. They wipe her memory.
It's quite a drastic course of action, isn't it?
I think so, but and then we have what I feel is the real trauma that begins, and that's the isolation between the sisters. That's the separation between the sisters.
It's the thing that we do with what's happened, isn't it? That's where the trauma embeds, compounds. It's the families And in, yeah, like you said, the trolls are kind of complicit in that, but which I think raises questions, doesn't it, about I don't know, the wisdom of the healer being something that's questioned. Although they do notice that they point out, don't they, that fear will be her enemy, and that turns out to be true, that it is fear of her own power, of her own, innate, what did you call it, sexuality, and it's that they notice right at the very beginning.
Yeah, I'm assuming the trolls don't have that many other options in terms of making money, so I'm gonna just, they do what they do, and that's fine. But absolutely, they did specify, they did absolutely, tell her that. But I think the fact that the parents didn't just sit the sisters down and explain this is just a normal thing that happens, and so in that moment, Elsa is basically that she's given that baton that she's now going to carry for the rest of her life. You can hurt people, and when you do, these drastic, dramatic situations occur, and when we have trauma, it does affect our memory, which I think is the connection there. It does change the way that we remember things. That we block things out. That's what the brain does. The brain, to protect us, it's wonderful in that way. It blocks out the terrible thing that we've experienced, and so that's what happened there. But it leaves Anna then trying to find love anywhere she can, and it leaves Elsa just completely alone and isolated, and just kind of defended. That these ice particles, those are her defenses.
Yes, and how sharp they are when she's angry and when it's out of control. The way the film presents them as all those aggressive shards, I think, is, again, it's a very beautiful, simple metaphor, but I think it's lovely. Anna is the one that goes towards Elsa, and she keeps going and tells her she loves her and keeps saying, why didn't you tell me this truth it would have been okay if you'd not kept it a secret. And she keeps going until that final wounding in the palace. And then there's a kind of retreat, isn't there? There's a sort of sense of, I'm been mortally wounded now, that I've gone so far to try and love you, Elsa, and this is the final wounding. And it's that point then where her decline starts, that she loses her kind of joy and her confidence in it. And what do I mean? Not neither joy nor confidence. I mean, her commitment to the relationship. She kind of turns away at that point. That the injury is a sort of metaphor for that. Would you? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was confused about that point. In fact, can you enlighten me? So, did Elsa do that intentionally, or was that another accident?
I think it was an accident, wasn't it? I mean, she was angry. Accident. She was like, "Get away from me! You cannot love me. I am unlovable." Was essentially what was going on underneath, and she sort of flung her arms out, and I think was she actually firing it at that? There were those two men, the baddies, weren't there, with their facial hair?
Yeah, and despite how sharp those shells were, she still wasn't able to impale them. Yeah, which I think had a lot to do with the fact that it was a PG, really. But I think she should have actually got that shot. But anyway,
well, you want to see an 18 certificate frozen?
I mean, I think, sometimes I watch these movies and I do, it's like that Where's Wally? I want to ram as many adult themes as I can into these movies and then rework them out while the kids can't tell. No, yeah, absolutely. I think it also brings up, as much as I do love this movie, and there are so many reasons that I can connect with it, it does bring something up around that power that we have inside us, how we deny it, how we suppress it, what the fear that people have around emotions. And so there's something here around, I think it was Christoph that said, I thought she'd never hurt you. And Anna said, well, I was wrong. I just, my heart just sinks when I hear her say that, because actually, like you say, we've had Anna keep going to Elsa for the whole movie, please, Elsa, please, Elsa. And then she finally, when she's all grown up, says, but I understand now. You don't have to rescue me anymore. I'm thinking about the drama triangle here. You don't have to protect me anymore. This doesn't all have to be on you, Elsa. And it feels like, this is that moment where actually they can do it together, but it isn't. And Elsa's emotions, this poor girl, she's been locked up, for most of her life, and she's carried this cross of badness on her back. she lets rip and she hurts her again. And I think, there's this metaphor of what will happen if I'm angry. What will happen to me? What will happen to others? What will happen if I'm sad? If I acknowledge the emotions that I'm feeling, if I show them to other people, there's a real fear in society and often in families around the emotional body, and it's just who we are. We cannot separate our physical bodies from our emotional bodies. That is part of how we exist in this world, and so there's something really, really important about that, I think.
I absolutely love what you're talking there about the power. There's a line, isn't there, in the Let It Go song where she says, "My power flurries through the air and into the ground. My soul is spiraling in frozen fractals all around." I absolutely get what you're saying, and there's so many. There have been quotes said by famous people that I now can't remember in full about. That it's the power inside you that you are most frightened of, because if you connect to all those feelings, and we can see why people don't connect to the feelings, but if you could just connect to them, it's terrifying to think what we would be capable of if we saw our emotions as data about the world rather than this thing that I can't control, this terrifying thing inside me that is taking over me. If we saw that instead as data, I feel like that's a really, really empowering position. But at the same time, from a personal perspective, I have been on the edge, on the precipice of letting something in or letting it out, either way, whatever, what I mean by that. And genuinely feeling, not knowing, it's not in your head, but a feeling that if I let this in, I'm going to kind of die. It's not literal death. It's like I said, it's not sort of an intellectual thing, but I've definitely been on that precipice and thought, if I can't let this in, if I let this in, I'm going to die. Something in me, I'll be overwhelmed. I'll be swept away. And so I can understand why we don't. I absolutely understand it. And at the same time, I know that is a precipice that we have to submit to. We have to throw ourselves over. Does that make sense?
Well, I think you're tapping into something that, that's at the nexus of everything, really. This kind of the human fear of annihilation, that is, there's so much here around Elsa's fear of literally annihilating Anna and her parents, and that, when her powers are first discovered, people assume that they're bad because they're in shock. That the town themselves are in shock, and instead of looking at what this girl is doing, this amazing gift that she has, they do what people do, sadly, and it's their fear of something that's different, and they demonize it, and they push away, they project their own fear onto her. If only they were to just have taken 5 minutes and thought, oh wow, she can make an ice rink, and that's great, we love this girl. She was very young, and there was something there around her needing to be able to have help with understanding her gift, and be able to talk about it with people and be able to have some guidance with it, because she didn't know what was happening. So there are these these very, very strong forces here around our own personal power, and how we can live in the world, accessing our personal power in an authentic way, where we don't have to dominate or subjugate another person, but we're actually living in alignment, and then the opposite to that the fear of annihilation. This power is too much for me, or I'm not enough for this power. Again, there's something around imposter syndrome when I think about that.
How imposter syndrome?
There's something around, conforming doesn't always have to be a bad thing. There are ways sometimes that when we conform, we can have benefits for us. Elsa, she's going to be a queen. I mean, it's not from everyone. It's not for me. But, you could say that there might be elements of that she might enjoy. There are benefits to conforming, but when conforming then means that you are pushing away, suppressing, repressing parts of yourself, when you're living your life for another person or a group of people, and it's not authentic, that's where the imposter syndrome starts to come. Because you're not living authentically. You're not living your truth. And so there's this sense of, am I enough? Where does that, what is that about? It's about basically not being able to say fuck it, really. Not being able to say this is my life, and I'm gonna live it the way that I want to do it. So again, I think about the themes of resilience. There is often a journey that we have to go through where we do have to rail against things. We do have to come up against difficult times, and we do have to build ourselves a robust enough skin so that actually that resilience can take us to the next place where we're living a little bit more authentically, where we're making the decisions for ourselves and not for others.
And if I can stitch together the two things that you said, because it's our connection to the body that tells us whether we're being authentic or not, that if we can sit quietly and tune in, because I think the word authentic is a word that we use so much in society. We even use it now about food, don't we? That we go to an authentic Thai restaurant or something. Well, what does that mean? But if we're talking about our emotional self, then that's a quiet place that we have to go to, isn't it? To find that, and it's a connection to body. It's what feels warm, what feels like. I mean, we're trying to essentially tune into what feels right for us without the noise of everybody else's opinions around it. And I think just to string together the two things that you said about our connection to bodies being such an important part of our ability to find a kind of contentment, to find a peace, because that's what we get when we are living within our own power like that. You're saying it's not a power over people, it's not a dominance, and it's not a subjugation either. You're absolutely right. It's a connection to self that is the fertile soil for those decisions.
Yeah, and it's reminding me of that lyric, "The storm inside of me." How do we quiet that storm? And we talk about things like meditation, walking in nature, journaling. I feel like we talk about things like that more than we ever have before, because we are understanding that there is a real need to quieten the storm inside of us. There is a real need to absolutely and it's great that you mentioned the body, because it takes me to Anna's hair color turning gray, when she has the ice in her heart, and as throughout the movie, actually it goes whiter and whiter. It makes me think about somatization and how when we don't live in an authentic way, when we are suppressing, when we are repressing emotions, it finds a place in our body to become physical pain. We see that a lot. And GPs are actually starting to recognize it in a way that they never have before. And they're hearing about their patients' physical ailments, and they're saying, okay, well, why don't we book you in for some counseling? People are making connections between the emotional body and the physical body, and somatization as a real thing.
Can I go back to something you said earlier, which it kind of supports that it is an eternal struggle? It's something that we all have, because unless society changes, and we can't, it's a slow, it's a big ship to turn around. It's a slow process of change. Like you say, GPs just about, even though research has been out for years about the link between mental health and physical health. So it is a slow process of change. But until we change society, then we end up with a nested system of referred shame. So you talked about the community of, is it Arundel? The town they live in. That the society shames Elsa. Like you say, they don't see that she could turn it all into an ice rink, or that she, as she does at the end, create these beautiful fountains and fabulous shapes in the snow and ice. And so you get a nested referred shame. So when she first causes the injury, when they're little children, she's devastated, and the parents don't respond in a way that, like you said, normalizes that. So she's got her own shame, then the shame of the family on the outside of that, and then society shames her on top of that. So there's no reprieve. She feels it herself. It's compounded by her parents. It's compounded by society. And so it's no wonder that psychotherapists have a job. It's no wonder that we have an endless stream of people coming to us saying, I'm struggling because how to hold on to that. Because we're talking about a really small kernel of truth that exists, a light inside us all that most of us struggle to connect to. And it's not surprising, is it? When we are in these families and in these societies where this kind of monkey mind of how we should be, this set of conformity, set of rules that we have to abide by. It's not surprising that people struggle to trust and they think of themselves as being flawed fundamentally.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something around Elsa. She tries so hard not to show, not to show what she's feeling, and not to cry. And so I've heard so many children respond to that vocally. You know, why can't she cry? And that's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to know that actually, you know, there's a generation of kids that don't have a problem with that feel like it's not a big deal if you're going to burst into tears. But they're asking the question, and the fact is that there are this idea that, you know, maybe crying suggests weakness. You know, how many people have been in situations where they've heard, you know, you're not going to see me cry, or you know, you made me cry, or there's something around what is actually it's actually quite a clever thing. You know, you feel sad, you know, the body sends water out of your eyes. I mean, I think it's quite genius, really, you know, but there's something around, you know, how it's viewed, the perception of sadness. And there was another movie, you know, Inside Out, which again did very well by Disney, where sadness was the anti-heroine. Obviously some body issues there with her being portrayed as a chubby fat kid in glasses, but again, another session. But that still, you know, the fact is that we're recognizing how important sadness is, how important it is to express what happens when we don't.
And all sorts of emotions. I think you're right. It's not just sadness that we denigrate in our society. I think anger in some circles is allowed, but certainly not for other people. Traditionally, women don't feel anger. And I think also we conflate then anger with aggression, and we conflate anger with violence when actually they're not necessarily, are they? And I think all our emotions, if we feel any of them in any intensity, it's that we're shying away from.
Absolutely. You know, at the beginning of the movie, we've got these men and they're chanting. I mean, so, you know, it's a great scene. I love it as a scene.
With the ice.
But the ice, you know, and they've got these big icebreakers, and they're basically talking about Elsa, and they're talking about how they're scared of her power. And, you know, later on, you know, her power is so forceful, it affects the economy, because that's how they, you know, make money, and how they sell us, right? And
that's so funny.
I mean, you know, we can see how a woman's power is viewed also in this movie, and we can see the double standards, and we can see that a man is allowed to have this power, not a problem. He can have a family, you know. In this movie, Elsa has to make a choice. You know, if it's power or romance, she can't have both. Anna has the romance, but Elsa, you know, she's a queen, right? So she, you know, she's got to give one of them up. We don't see men in that way. You know, there's a lot here again, you know, with the way that a woman's power is viewed. She ended up being a queen. It would have been quite nice if maybe she wanted to, I don't know, leave Arendelle and do a PhD in fairy tales, or just abdicate for herself, you know. So there was something about the fact that she ended up, I don't know, doing the right thing, conforming to a certain degree. A woman's power, and what it means for a woman to show anger, and until the 1950s, you know, women were being actually locked up. It's absolutely horrific for them to say, but because their hysteria, you know, was seen as some kind of mental illness, they were angry. They were expressing themselves. They were showing emotions, and there's a very specific way society views that. You know, there's so much here, isn't there? It's such a rich, so much comes up for myself, you know, for the clients I see, for the work I do. There's something about, you know, I did a film degree, and I love film. I love how it helps us. I find it a real catharsis. I find it incredibly healing. I'm remembering Carrie. I'm remembering.
Oh, cracky.
Yes, I'm remembering. Well, you know, you say that, but you know, she was tormented as a teenager. She was frozen to the spot. when she was in the shower room, and then, at the end in prom, she was also completely frozen as she kind of wreaked her demonic revenge on everyone, that had hurt her. And there's, I think that's the very extreme, of when we don't have a way to heal that pain, and then we can't let it go. I suppose I just want to say that it's not easy. It's not easy living. It's not easy doing what we do. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to be able to look inside yourself. And I think people are wanting to do that, and they are wanting to do it more openly than we have done it before. And
I think that's really interesting, because because it's a film and it all has to fit into a 90-minute schedule. The moment where Elsa walks away, it looks like this huge moment of liberation. But what you don't get is the fear that will have been inside her as she does that. And if we talk about real people, that precipice, that point where we say, do you know what? No more of that. I don't need to be that good girl anymore. The point at which it's not a cliff edge, is it? It's not a decision to suddenly shed all the expectations that other people have had of us. It's not a cliff edge, and it's not necessarily a sort of an instantaneously joyful and liberating process. Actually, that is the scariest point, the point where somebody realizes, and in fact, certainly in my experience sitting in the room with people, it's the point of the most despair for them. Is the point where they realize that they can't do it anymore, because at that point they are facing what they think is annihilation, to use your word. At that point they think, I have no choice. I have to be me, do this thing that is me, speak my own truth, embody my own power. And at that point, that is when, for the person sitting opposite me, they are in the most terror.
Absolutely.
For me as the therapist, that's the point where I feel a kind of hope, because that then feels like, okay, now we can tenderly rebuild. Now you realize how important you are in this. And I find it always the most moving part of anybody's, I don't know, time with me.
I think where I'm sitting is opposite somebody who is so courageous to have brought themselves to that point, to have made the call, to be sitting on the sofa opposite me, a complete stranger.
Yeah, and that's a slow and painful, deeply painful place to then start your journey. I'm going to use the word journey from. And the film depicts it as this moment of celebration, which it is on so many levels, but it doesn't feel like that. Anushka, it has been an absolute delight. Do you want to just tell us where folks can find you? So because you do online therapy as well, so people don't necessarily have to live locally to you in London, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So so my website is Mandalay Therapy. That's MANDERLAY therapy. And absolutely in person or online. It's been lovely talking to you, Nadine. It's been really fun.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you again soon.
Take good care.
Bye, love. Bye. Thanks for being with us this episode. The next episode will drop soon. It'll take one aspect of this one and dig a little deeper into how that might be explored in the therapy room. We call it the B-side. In the meantime, if you'd like to have more of our conversations and metaphorical excavations, it'd be grand for you and grand for us if you would subscribe to the podcast or share a favourite episode with a friend. And one last thing. If you have a metaphor, image or idea that you would like us to explore, then get in touch via our Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to hear from you.